So this is what was already being said about the Nets before the James Harden trade rumors.
He's averaged 27 for his career. I expect that to continue. And if this brother is remotely healthy, I can't see anybody in the East stopping Brooklyn from getting to the finals next year. Lord have mercy.
And this is what's being said amidst all these Harden to the Nets trade rumors.
That question, well, how does it work? Yo, you make it work. You have James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving on the same team. You make it work, and they will be the favorite to win the whole thing. I don't care what anybody says. The whole thing.
But can you look at the Brooklyn Nets if they were to acquire Harden and say KD, Harden, Kyrie should not be the favorites to win the title? Who could definitively say that knowing the game of basketball? I don't think anyone can.
Man, I just cannot wrap my mind around how much the media and people in general are beginning to overhype the Nets. It's crazy to see, honestly, and even crazier to think about how similar this is to the Clippers hype before this past season when the media was just anointing them as the favorites to be the champions just because of how things looked on paper. Like, wow, Kyrie and KD, that's already insane. Now they could possibly add James Harden. They're the champions. It's ridiculous. Only difference between this Nets hype and the Clippers hype last year is that at least their players aren't prematurely hooting and hollering about how they're going to win the title like Patrick Beverley and Lou Williams were last year. However, the reality is that the media is setting the Brooklyn Nets up for failure in the 2021 season. And no, this is not me claiming that the Nets aren't about to be good. Not at all, but so many factors are being overlooked that it doesn't even make sense. So yeah, in today's video, we're looking at how and why the Nets are not really what everybody, including some players and especially the media, thinks they are about to be. But before I go further, what's good YouTube? Plug Speaks back with a vid. If you are new, subscribe. If you also agree that Harden to the Nets might not be the right move, sub up. I'm dropping quality basketball vids 2 to 3 times a week, and we're aiming to hit 1K within this month. Back to the video though. So like I said in the intro, it's a whole lot of factors that are being overlooked as people discuss the Nets' upcoming season. And there will be even more factors if James Harden to the Nets actually happens. But as I make this video, I have no way of knowing if it will actually occur in the next few days. So I will briefly talk about the issue with having James Harden actually join these Nets. But I'll mostly talk about the Nets' current roster that will for sure be playing when the season starts again December 22nd. But right now, some issues with adding James Harden to this Nets team. It looks sweet on paper. That's something everybody can agree on. 2 MVPs and an elite point guard who has had some incredible playoff moments and who is widely seen as the greatest dribbler of all time. This big three would have a ton of talent and bucket getters. However, the first and obvious question that comes to mind is, how could they gel in terms of chemistry and playing together? Yes, we know Kyrie and KD are like best friends off the court and that KD and Harden have had some history on the court, but off the court ties don't guarantee fluidity when playing on the court, and neither does some experience as teammates nearly a decade ago. Come on now, these are 3 guys with first option attitudes. James Harden has said on several occasions that he sees himself as the best player on earth. KD has said the same. And Kyrie is someone who we all know just is not comfortable being second fiddle to anybody. And even as he joined KD in Brooklyn, he said that he sees himself on par with him and that for the first time in his career, someone else on his team can hit the big shot too, as if he never played with LeBron. But now, James Harden joins this team though, that's 2 people Kyrie will know can make that shot too. And whether Kyrie believes it or not, that will be 2 players on his own team that are better at basketball and more accomplished in their careers than he is, making him the 3rd option, which he has never been in his career. And I know this is a two-way street. Some people will look at Kyrie being the 3rd option as, wow, if Kyrie is your 3rd option, that's a scary team. But that's completely ignoring the presence of ego, which I do feel was overblown by the media during Kyrie's time in Boston, but it's not just non-existent. And I cannot see Kyrie or any of the other 2 guys being the 3rd option on this team, or even feeling comfortable barely averaging something in the low 20s for points when all of them averaged 26 or more in their most recent season. I just cannot see it working, but that's enough attention I will give to the James Harden scenario for now because it simply has not happened yet. Anyway, for how things currently stand with Durant set to return off his Achilles injury and with Kyrie also set to return healthy off a less major but also still worth mentioning shoulder injury, things look solid. The Nets have brand new faces leading the coaching staff in Steve Nash and Mike D'Antoni, which is especially important in that there is already a sense of familiarity between them. Not to mention, the Nets even have a decent amount of depth with guys like Spencer Dinwiddie, Joe Harris, Karis LeVert, Jared Allen, and even Jamal Crawford, who was 40 years old but can still contribute partially. And notice all of these factors I just mentioned are positives. I mean, I'm not just here to down the Nets. Me seeing them as overhyped does not equate to me thinking they're a bad team or thinking that they just cannot be elite. So no, the reason all these bold statements by the media are even being made is because they have such great potential. However, the media anointing them as the favorites to win the East just off how things look on paper without seeing a single game with the new coaching staff and returning players is a joke, and a little too similar to how the Clippers were anointed as the favorites to win this past season. Because like I said before, there are many factors that it seems are just being ignored. For one, can Kyrie stay healthy for a full season? Because the injury prone issue with him is very real. I mean, to his credit, before this past season, he played at least 60 games or more in the regular season for 3 consecutive years, but it just seems like there is always something with his health, whether it be his knees, shoulders, quadriceps. He cannot catch a break. And man, his play style requires so many agile movements, so obviously these types of injuries often keep him out for extended periods of time. And if the Nets' idea to try and solve or prevent this issue is to practice load management, then their playoff seeding may be negatively affected. But moving on to another factor, which I know is a point that I know we're all probably tired of hearing because it was an overblown issue by the media, but the fact of the matter is that we don't know what the chemistry will look like and if there will be chemistry issues, and that's on top of the fact that there really is no quote-unquote leader personality on this team. We know KD gets buckets, top 2 player in the world when completely healthy, but he was not the alpha on OKC, and even on the Warriors, I'd say Steph and Draymond were alphas before saying him. And really, I'm sure most people would agree with that. So will KD suddenly take charge, or is that on Kyrie, who you could say has an alpha personality, but does he go about it the right way? Because like I said, yes, his issues in Boston and even the reports earlier this year were not completely true, as I mean, he's not just some toxic monster, but there is always some truth when something continues to come up over and over. Not to mention that Kyrie sometimes brings all the heat upon himself when answering questions in interviews. So yeah, who knows, maybe the chemistry could work out great, maybe it could be a disaster. But what I do know is that wondering how the chemistry will work out is a valid question, and for the media to just brush over this and rank the Nets so highly makes no sense to me. Anyway, for the third factor, which has less to do with the Nets and more to do with everyone else in the East, because why is the media acting like the Bucks, Miami Heat, Boston Celtics, and even the Raptors no longer exist? If Kyrie and KD return healthy and play like themselves next season, all the teams I just mentioned could still put up a fight. Yes, you heard that right. Some of which could even probably win. The Bucks, especially after adjusting their lineup with the addition of Jrue Holiday. And this addition is not an incredibly major piece that could change the Bucks' game plan too drastically, so chemistry is not even an issue. Come on now. Then you got the Heat, who have woken everybody up, and they're not just going to suddenly fall off anytime soon. They have so many young guys on the rise: Tyler Herro, Bam Adebayo, Duncan Robinson, Kendrick Nunn, and they're only about to get better as Jimmy leads the way while he nears the end of his prime years. Then you got the Celtics, who seriously could have been in the finals this year. I may be a little bit biased, but everyone should know they are still dangerous. To both Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are only ascending. We all know that, right? And it's not too crazy to think they could both become superstars in this league in no time. And as much as I love my guy Kemba, his performance in the playoffs were partially to blame for their loss in the conference finals. But mind you, he came off an injury, and that was his first time in the playoffs in 4 years, and also the farthest he'd ever gone in an NBA season. So yeah, I repeat, the Celtics are still dangerous. But boom, I just gave solid cases for 3 Eastern Conference teams, and yet the media still feels as though a team in which we've never seen all the players play together, such as the Nets, should suddenly be the favorites to come out the East. Man, that's just crazy. It really doesn't make any sense, besides the fact that the purpose of the media is partially to build up hype, so I guess that's their excuse. I don't know, man, but I'm gonna wrap this video up. I for sure appreciate y'all watching, man. Make sure to let me know what you think in the comments, whether or not you see eye to eye with me on this. If you think the media is hyping the Nets up a little too much, again, overhyped does not mean I'm hating. But that's it for me. Like this up, share all of that, and I'm out.